So good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us today to talk about trash. This is Environmentalist Trash Talk. We're joined today by a number of advocates and also a number of esteemed New York State senators. We have with us Senator Kaminsky, Senator Gaughran, Senator Reichlin-Melnick, Senator Liu, and who am I missing? No, that's it. Okay, I did that. Thank you. And the advocates will also be up and they will introduce themselves, but we also have with us Julie Tai from League Conservation Voters. We have Eric Goldstein from NRDC. We have Clean and Healthy New York represented today. What's your first name again?
Paul Webster.
Paul Webster from Clean and Healthy New York. And and where is, there you are, okay. Andrew Rader from Okra. So we're here today because we in New York are experiencing a solid waste management crisis. And it's a crisis that's going to be exacerbated over the years, and it's not going to fix itself. This is about supporting a bill with the worst name in America. It's called the Extended Producer Responsibility. And really, it's a bill that will help us increase recycling and decrease solid waste. That is the goal. As we look for solid waste management options, the one thing everybody agrees on is to reduce solid waste. And this bill is about sharing the responsibility and putting a part of the responsibility in reducing our waste on the manufacturers, and not only leaving the burden on municipalities and the taxpayers and the public. Right now, we rely 100% on municipalities and the public to recycle and dispose of waste, leaving no incentive for manufacturers to produce less waste in packaging for their paper and plastic packaging materials. That is not sustainable, it's not working, it's costly, and it needs to end. That's the goal of this bill. But let's hear from our Senate sponsor, Senator Todd Kaminsky.
Thank you so much, Adrian, to my colleagues and to the advocates here for fighting for this groundbreaking bill. Although this bill is new in New York, it's certainly, the idea is not new in the world. This is used widely in Europe and widely to our neighbor to the north in Canada. And in crafting this bill, we tried to take the best aspects of each of those bills in combining this bill. There's a crisis going on, and we see it in our homes, we see it on our curbs, and we see it in our local city halls. What do I mean? Well, first of all, we put things in recycling bins every day that don't actually get recycled. They end up going to landfills. And we have municipalities who are in complete financial distress because their recycling operations are financially insolvent, lose their money, and they are either forced to scale back or literally ship products that should be recycled out. And that's because all of the recycling material that they used to sell is no longer, there's no longer a market for it. And so they're stuck with it. They're not able to invest in new equipment and be able to recycle different materials, and they are suffering greatly. And we also see this on our curbs. Come out on any recycling day in my community, and you'll see Amazon boxes piled to the sky, all for like a tube of suntan lotion that's inside 4 different boxes. And that's because producers don't have to think of the consequences of the amount of packaging they put out into the world or the type of packaging they put out into the world. Andrew Rader, who does this for a living, told me a really great story once about an iced tea bottle that had metal stenciling on it. And the marketing department of that iced tea company, I'm sure, thought it would look cool and catchy to have this type of stenciling on the bottle. But that metal stenciling has the potential and has destroyed machines in municipal recycling facilities. But that producer had no thought, there was no incentive at all to rethink about how to get the same message in a different way. And that's what EPR will do. EPR will have packagers and producers of packaging and paper products, I should say, come together to decide how to price their products. And we are getting good buy-in. We have people like Pepsi and Unilever who are actually buying into this bill because instead of being dictated to, they want to be at the table to help set the pricing. And the pricing is based on a fancy term called eco-modulation. But it makes sense. Eco-modulation means the more you put out and the more harmful stuff you put out, the more you'll pay. And the the more of a responsible environmental citizen you are, the less you'll pay. And that's going to create this green circular economy. And it's going to put money into the pockets of our municipalities, that will help our taxpayers, and that will allow them to have real recycling operations, invest in new technology, and really tackle head-on this crisis we're having. This will not solve itself. Things will not just get better. We have a serious problem in this country, serious problem in the state, and it's going to require a comprehensive solution to deal with it. And one way or the other, we are going to have to make hard decisions about how to deal with our recycling crisis. We know this has worked in other places, it will work here. If you look at the recycling recovery numbers of what other municipalities that have EPR, they exceed us by exponents. We do not have the recovery rates we should. We do not have the funding we need to support it. And frankly, we do a lot of wish cycling in our state, and we're all guilty of it. We throw things in the bin that we hope get recycled. We never know if they do, and frankly, many are not. So we got to confront this head on today. We're seeing a lot of this right here. These are products that we use or we have in our hands every day, and they're not being turned into other products for the most part. They're filling up landfills, and they're crippling our municipalities. We have to do better. EPR will allow us to do better. And I'm just grateful to the advocates here for helping really advance this idea. I think its time has come, and to my colleagues for supporting this. We've got great co-sponsors on this. I feel a lot of momentum in the Senate, and over the next few weeks, the time to get it done is ripe, and I'm confident we will. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Kaminsky. Senator Gaughran, would you like to say a few words?
Thank you so much, Adrian, Julian, and all the advocates, and Senator Kaminsky and my colleagues. Senator Kaminsky's impact as chair of the Environmental Committee is already being felt here in the city of Albany, because I want you to know this morning when I woke up, there was no shampoo bottle in my hotel room. But I took care of it. But actually, seriously, that's what it's all about. Legislation like that we could laugh about, but it's all part of what we have to do to reduce the amount of waste that gets produced in the first place, because we're running out of room. 25 years ago on Long Island, we had a garbage barge filled with garbage that was floating all over the eastern seaboard trying to find a port. We are heading in that direction again, unless we do something, particularly about recycled materials that we can't recycle anymore. So that's why I am so proud to be a co-sponsor of this legislation, and hopefully before now and the end of the session we can get it done. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Senator Gaughran. Senator Liu.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here, first because my chairperson of environmental conservation is spearheading the passage of this important bill, and I support Senator Kaminsky on so many of his efforts to protect our planet for our children and grandchildren. And my second reason to be here is because Julie and the league, they issue these report cards, and after decades of me not getting any report cards, my mother found out about this report card, and so now I'm stressed all the time because she gets all bent out of shape when I don't get straight A's. But extended producer responsibility is an issue that I've actually been very interested in for well over a decade. This concept of reducing packaging or better designing products, asking producers to understand the impact of embedding glass with metal, or even where manufacturers place harmful elements such as how they design refrigerator construction or car manufacturing. These are all elements that producers should take more responsibility in on the front end before we start, before we even get to the reduce, reuse, and recycle. Producers can do much more, sometimes with no cost whatsoever. It's just a matter of putting a harmful element in one place that's more accessible upon disposal of the product, or reducing the packaging that's available there. And he talked about eco-pricing. For me, as someone who dabbles in economics, it's simply internalizing this economic externality where these decision makers make pricing decisions and purchase decisions without regard to the actual social cost. We're internalizing the social cost. This is good legislation. I hope it gets passed. I'm certainly going to do what I can to get it passed. Thank you.
And our last Senate speaker, before our terrific advocates, and thank you, Julie, for having your report card revered and feared. Is now our new senator from Rockland County, Senator Reichlin-Melnick.
Thanks so much. Thank you so much. Glad to be here to support this incredibly important bill, and thank you, Senator Kaminsky, for introducing it, and proud to be one of the co-sponsors of this legislation. Basically, we can know a couple of things about the recycling industry in New York. It's not working. For too many recycled materials such as this, they're just incinerated, they're sent to landfills, they're strewn along our roadways, our highways, our waterways. There used to be a time when municipalities around the state could actually process recyclables, sell them in bulk back to producers for a profit that would sustain the system. But there's been so many changes in the international recycling market over the past few years. There's such a severe lack of a domestic market for these materials, rising processing costs, and so what was once this lucrative industry for municipalities and others has become a burdensome cost that weighs on so many of our municipal budgets. And I come out of village government before running for Senate, and I know exactly how much over the last few years we were seeing an increase in recyclable costs. So this extended producer responsibility system will ensure that the industries responsible for creating massive amounts of material typically bound for landfills will be responsible for the associated costs of processing these materials. We won't have hidden environmental and end-of-life costs anymore, passed on to governments and taxpayers. This EPR system will create an enhanced domestic demand for post-consumer materials, and that demand will create new industries, services, and jobs for New Yorkers. And I just want to thank Senator Kaminsky and Assemblymember Engelbright for introducing this bill. I know it is going to make a huge difference for our environment and for our state as we move towards a more sustainable future. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm sure we all just noticed Senator Kavanagh slip in there under the wire. Before we go to Senator Kavanagh, we're going to ask Julie Ty from the New York League of Conservation Voters to talk about why we need this bill.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here in Albany today. We have been trying to move ourselves to a green economy and to one that is really striving towards zero waste. And we started a long time ago with the bottle bill, which I spent entirely too much time on in my life. And we 10 years ago, can't believe it's been 10 years, we passed, the first sort of really focused environmental extended producer responsibility law with e-waste. And now we've passed a bill for paint. And now really sort of the coup de grace is getting to packaging. As we're seeing during the pandemic, as many, many people are ordering from Amazon and other places from home, we are getting more and more packaging. As Todd said, there's nothing like getting a package of sneakers, which is in a box, in another box. And we really need to provide the incentives like the Waste Reduction and Recycling Act, as the alternative name to EPR, can provide the incentives for these companies, as Senator Liu, you pointed out, to make these decisions on the front end so that they're reducing the amount of waste that we're generating in the first place. Because that is the easiest way to reduce our footprints on the environment, to reduce the amount of emissions. Sort of the waste is the unsung hero of the climate fight. It's 4% of our emissions, and we need to take action to help reduce that. And so because we have these goals, we have decided this bill is going to be, Senator Kaminsky and Assemblyman Engelbright's bill is going to be on our scorecard this year in 2021. We notified members of that last week. We're hoping that will help you get more co-sponsors. We're trying to inspire people. Yeah, he's looking for an A, but it's not the only bill. Wow. But it's something that we want to make sure the legislature passes and moves forward, because we need to start tackling our waste problem, and this is a big way we can help make that happen. So thank you very much, Senator, and thank you to Assemblyman Engelbright, and thank you all for being here.
Thank you. And Senator Brian Kavanagh, we would love for you to say a few words. Senator Kavanagh.
I'll be very brief. Not used to coming to in person. This is very exciting, Roxanne. And I was thinking first, the maintenance things have really gone downhill since we were working. that's a prop. Okay. But no, it is really great to be here, and I want to join my colleagues in thanking all the environmental advocates who pushed for EPR for so long, and particularly Senator Kaminsky and Senator Senator Engelbright. Both of them really have done a great job of seizing this moment where we're looking at very big solutions to the very big problems that have plagued us for so long. And as Julie mentioned, these issues really are related. We've had a really important focus on climate change recently, which is necessary and critical through the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act and our subsequent efforts to ensure that that is implemented properly, that we have the resources necessary, that we set the standards in place and give teeth and specifics to that. But extended producer responsibility and product waste and solid waste really is a huge and very well connected problem to all of the other issues we need. Producing all this stuff does produce emissions. Disposing of it produces costs for localities. It produces, a lot of it does not get disposed of properly, so it ends up on our lands, in our waters, in our oceans. There's also, with EPR, it does have a very positive effect if done properly on reducing toxins. And we've had a number of steps we've taken to get certain specific toxins out of our waste stream and out of our lives, but really making sure that producers are responsible for the whole life cycle of the product really is going to be a positive step forward. There are other products that are kind of waiting in the wings for this kind of treatment, including carpets and other things, so that we've been working on for a long time. But passing this bill will be a huge step forward, and I'm very committed to working with the colleagues, doing everything I can to get it done. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, we know that it's important to protect the environment by reducing less packaging and less waste. But what about the cost? Does it actually save us money? The answer is yes. This bill saves villages money, saves towns money, saves the taxpayer money, and saves the environment. Those are 4 great reasons to pass this bill. Here to talk more about the economics is Andrew Reichlin.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Andrew Reichlin. I'm the Director of Recycling for OCRA. That's the Onondaga County Resource Recovery Agency, and I also serve as the chair of the New York Product Stewardship Council. I'm thinking about what my parents' expectations were for me once upon a time, and I think they were hoping for a doctor, but they got a garbage man. And so here are a few quick observations from a guy who's been talking trash for 30 years. 40 years ago, New York State got serious about recycling. That's when the state required local municipalities to pass local recycling laws and initiate local municipal recycling programs. Now, 4 decades later, it's time for recycling in New York State to evolve. Senator Kaminsky, Assemblyman Engelbright, they realize that. And we applaud their leadership in setting New York State on a new course, a course towards extended producer responsibility. EPR, a bold vision where consumer brand owners pay their fair share in the recovery of the millions of tons of packaging materials that they place into the market every year. The good news is that today, across New York State, residents are recycling 1.5 million tons of material from their homes every year. Unfortunately, that 1.5 million tons of recyclables is only about 20% of the material recovery for recycling from the residential sector. Each year, over 750,000 tons of potentially recyclable materials never make it into our curbside recycling bins. And municipalities, 40 years after launching curbside recycling, are now spending $60 to $80 million a year to keep local recycling afloat. It's a cost that is unsustainable. And it's a system that is underperforming and is in dire need of modernization. It's time for extended producer responsibility. It's time for New York State to once again lead the nation in creating a circular economy. Senator Kaminsky, thank you for bringing public attention to the recycling crisis and for leading us towards a solution that will reduce waste, create jobs, increase recycling, and relieve local municipalities of the untenable cost of maintaining an outdated recycling system. Thanks all.
Thank Well, we all love New York City. It's part of the heartbeat of our state. But they also produce a lot of waste. So how does New York City feel about this bill? Well, here to tell us more is Eric Goldstein from the Natural Resources Defense Council, also a resident of New York City.
Thank you, Adrian. I first started working on solid waste issues when Governor Mario Cuomo appointed a very young Eric Goldstein to be on the very first solid waste management board that was created by the New York State Solid Waste Management Act of 1988. And despite the progress that's been made since then, New York is still drowning in trash. More plastics, more packaging. We continue to be a throwaway society. The U.S. Environmental Protection Agency says that the amount of waste that Americans produced has almost tripled from 1960 to the present. Almost tripled the amount of trash that we generate. And that's about 4.5 pounds per person per day for the New York City resident. That's just municipal trash. That doesn't count industrial waste, that doesn't count agricultural waste, that doesn't count the manufacturer's waste in the production of the product upstream. So we've got a major problem with trash. These days in New York City and in New York State, most of our waste still goes to landfills and incinerators. Both of those pose environmental problems, and too often those facilities are located in poor communities and communities of color. The best thing we could do is reduce the amount of waste we generate. The next best thing we could do is recycle or compost it. But manufacturers and producers simply have no incentive now to change the way they are producing. And that's why when you look on the streets of New York City and in the basements in New York City apartment houses, you see more and more packaging, more and more plastics, more and more cardboard. What can we do? The answer is extended producer responsibility. It's a brilliant concept with a terrible name. But as you've heard from Senator Kaminsky, the idea is simple. We create an incentive for manufacturers to reduce the amount of plastics and the amount of packaging they produce in the first place, to recycle more, use more recycled content in their packaging and paper and other materials, and to make their materials and products more recyclable at the end of the line. And they do so with financial incentives that send money to recycling programs. So this means that cities like New York and counties and towns will no longer have to carry the burden of dealing with recyclables, which are increasingly costly to get rid of and get back into the stream of commerce, and that the producers and manufacturers who make this stuff and who are in the best position to change will take up the baton. So we're enormously thankful to Senator Kaminsky, who's a real environmental champion, and Assemblyman Engelbright, who's a good friend of the environment himself, for advancing this concept. It's one of the most exciting concepts in solid waste in New York in decades. If it passes, it'll mean a big difference for towns, for counties, for taxpayers, and for everyone who cares about air and water and solving the climate crisis. Thank you for your attention.
And last but absolutely not least, we have Paul Webster from Clean and Healthy New York, an organization that's worked hard to keep toxics out of our food, our products, and our environment. Paul?
Good morning, and thank you to the Senator and all the members for the great work that they're doing with this bill. Our create, use, and throw away society is not working. Our landfills are filling up. Our incinerators are putting too much pollution into our society and causing asthma and other health problems. And then all of this excess packaging and solid waste is also winding up in our waters all over the state. So this bill helps to control some of that and to make the producers responsible as we work out this problem of solid waste in New York State. Possibly a suggestion, Senator, would be that we empower some of our industrial development agencies, IDAs, to offer incentives to local manufacturers to get them to reconsider how they make packaging and plastics and waste that we have. But this bill is a great step in the right direction, and we support that for all New Yorkers on behalf of Clean and Healthy New York and the Just Green Partnership.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So let me just wind this up and say one thing we do know, and that is that the public supports extended producer responsibility. As demonstrated by these 10,000 names on the petitions there from all over New York State. Why does the public support extended producer responsibility? Because the entire burden of recycling is right now on the public. And frankly, it's confusing. So we have to become recycling experts when you're really, working 2 jobs and busy raising kids. So let me give you a test. For instance, this plastic lid, is it recyclable? Maria, do you think this is recyclable?
No.
You're right. Plastic plate, but is this recyclable? Didn't ask you. Okay, Andrew is answering. It is not recyclable. Chobani, number 5, is this recyclable?
In some places.
It depends on where you live. Oh, I got the senator, did you see that? So here's the thing, I have Chobani addiction, which I freely admit. It's a number 5. And most towns aren't taking number 5 anymore. They'll take 1 and 2. They'll take 1, 2, and 5. Some take 1, 2, 5, and 7. Some of them take 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Who knows?
Yeah, but then they don't recycle.
Well, I'm just saying, as a resident, you have to know what the number is and what your town recycles. So now it's getting even harder. Then there are some products that we can't read it. Now, I don't pretend to be young anymore, all right? We just give it up. But I can't see the numbers. So in order to actually recycle, I gotta put glasses on, I gotta hold it up to the light, and then it's still a little challenging. So recycling has become too difficult and too challenging for the average consumer. And that's why we need to share the burden with the manufacturers. Numbers should be prominent. Maybe we should have particular companies that are in New York State, like Chobani, put their product in a 1 or 2. So we know every municipality takes them and every municipality can easily recycle it. There should be clearer labeling, easier to recycle, and products that are more recyclable. That's what extended producer responsibility leads us to, a shared burden. So not only does the public have to recycle, but industry has to make it easier and less expensive to do. So that's the bottom line. We're working to get this done this year. I come from Long Island. We are heading straight off the cliff for a solid waste management crisis. The one giant Asheville we have that's still open closes in 3 years. And the vast majority of the towns use that. And where will it go after that? Nobody knows. Nobody has a plan, nothing. That means costs are gonna go up, and the one thing we agree on is that will save us money if solid waste goes down. That's what this bill's about. So thank you.
Questions, please?
Questions?